Hi, I'm Leslie Anderson. I'm the Director of Collections, Exhibitions, and Programs at the National Nordic Museum in Seattle. Welcome to Nordic Talks, Food Security and Sustainability, a series of 4 panels. And during these talks, leading innovators and advocates for sustainable food practices and conservation discuss solutions to contemporary issues in the areas of fine dining, food processing and packaging, and agriculture. Leaders from the Nordic region and the state of Washington are participating in this series of talks to increase awareness and inspire positive actions for a more secure and sustainable world. This first panel is titled Fine Dining for All, How Chefs Fed Communities During COVID-19. And the National Nordic Museum is grateful for the support of the Nordic Council of Ministers, the Embassy of Denmark in the United States, the Embassy of Finland in the United States, Barbro Osher Pro Suecia Foundation, and Scan Design Foundation. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the panel's moderator, Jackie Veriano. Jackie Veriano is a food writer for the Seattle Times, covering the dynamic restaurant scenes in the neighborhoods that surround Seattle. She loves telling stories that discuss why we eat the things that we do and when in the Pacific Northwest region and beyond. Jackie, I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Leslie. And now it's my job to introduce everyone else, which I'm really hoping I do this right. So we've got 3 wonderful people here with me today. The first is Sasu Laukkonen. He is the chef and partner of the Michelin star Aura restaurant in Helsinki. We have Jeanette Doos. She is the head of Junk Food, which is the project that Chef Rasmus Munk of Alchemist restaurant in Copenhagen first started. Jeanette came from fundraising and NGO world for the last 7 years before becoming involved with junk food. And then we have Chef Zachary Packleb, who with his brother Seth runs Brothers & Co. in Seattle. You guys do so much between catering, events, farmers market, dinners, prepared meals. So thank you everyone for being here. Yesterday we had a tech check and Sasu and I were talking afterward kind of about how things have been going the last year. And he said something that really struck me as accurate in that you all over the last year took the chance to do something different. Whereas a lot of people maybe tried to stay doing the same thing or just not knowing what to do, you all took action. But I'm wondering, as things started, like as we think back to last March, which kind of feels like a million years ago in some sense, when you first realized the impact of the pandemic and how it would change your business. So Sasu, because you kind of had like an immediate change, I'm wondering if you'll tackle that question first.
I'll try my very best to tackle this one. So how things affected me and my work is kind of straight to the face. I mean, I'm running a 20-seat restaurant at the very maximum, where probably in a normal world, we would be doing 16 to 17 guests a night in a 39 square meter restaurant with a 9 square meter kitchen, and everything is open. So all guests see everything that we do when we are catering for their needs and talking about the ingredients and all. And so of course we could hear all of these stories from around the world that something's happening and it's coming to Finland and it's going to hit us at some point, but like none of us knew what's going to happen, right? So we were just kind of going like, well, okay, we'll take it as it comes. And when that happened for me was like the 15th of March last year, so 2020, 15th of March. That was like the make it or break it kind of moment for me. So we had a weekend off like we usually do. We're working Wednesday to Saturday. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday off. Sunday, the bad news hit. Monday, I started thinking, texting everyone. So texting my financiers saying, do you guys have an idea? What should we do if this hits us? By Tuesday morning, from that week, 96 bookings that we had for the week. So 96 people booked into the restaurant of like 17 seats. 90 of them had canceled. And this was Tuesday morning, and Wednesday we should have been doing service pretty much. And I said, whoa, 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 we're not going to be serving dinners, right? Because people are so scared, nobody knows what to do. So what do we do? And no one had an idea. So I said, okay, I have an idea. If you want to support me on this one, we're just going to turn and start making sushi, just takeaway sushi. And everyone said, what? What do you mean sushi? Why? Like, what's the point? And I said, wait a minute, like, we've got people pretty much grounded at their house right now. They're not going to come for dinner. We're not going to be serving lunch. And what happened in Finland was that it wasn't so that all restaurants had to close right away. It was like a moment of blur for everybody. So we had almost 2 weeks of the transition phase before the first lockdown started here. And I made a super executive decision. We never opened the door for guests. We just opened the kitchen window and we started selling sushi boxes out of there. And with my precision and my thoughts, like, none of my team had never ever made sushi before. And they were super honest about it. So I said, okay, great. Now we get to do this our style. And then we just started from ground zero. Like, I remember I was like 3 hours on the phone to just get all the stuff that we needed for Wednesday morning to start serving sushi at like 11:30 the next day. And we just started out of nowhere. We didn't have like a rice cooker, and none of them knew how to how to sort of slice the fish on top of nigiri. So we went like, okay, we'll start with maki rolls, and just got super creative, and it was crazy, but it worked.
Yeah, because you went from, I mean, it was 14 pieces of sushi in a box for,
Yes.
Was it 15 euro?
Yes, 15 euros.
And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden you were selling what, 250 boxes a day?
A day, yes. So we started, first of all, we wanted to start at 11, but we couldn't because we didn't have space and fans and everything to cool the rice as fast as it was needed to. So we had to start at 12 o'clock. And by 12 o'clock, we could do like the local fish shop who wanted our sushi, and then the local sort of organic, whatever, kind of a farmer's market store that we have here. They wanted our sushi instead of some generic whatever. And it just went crazy. Like the first day we started, I told everybody, I don't think we're going to do more than 30 boxes or something. So I just put it on my social media and hoped that it would work. And one of our TV channels came in and they made a story into their internet pages. And the next day they were there with the camera, and it just went crazy after that. So yeah, 250 boxes of sushi a day. When we changed into mostly nigiri sushis, it meant like we made 2,500 handmade 20-gram little nigiris with all the toppings and everything. Of course, it was madness, but somehow it worked.
Yeah. Well, and it was an overnight change.
Yes.
Zachary, I can't remember when farmers markets first decided that they were not going to be offering hot food anymore. Was the change that dramatic for you and your brother?
Yeah, honestly, it kind of first came about where they're just like, okay, March, I don't remember what it was that weekend, like March 15th or 16th, like that's going to be the last market in person. And then they just completely shut everything down. And, you know, unlike being in a brick and mortar, we are on the street every weekend. And so there's, you know, there was other conversations amongst the city that kind of shut down the farmers markets for I don't know, it was at least a couple of months, you know. So nothing was operating at all, no hot food, no farmers, except for the few kind of renegade farmers that set up in the same place as they have. I mean, I know there's one farmer and specifically, he's like, I haven't missed a farmers market in like 10 years or whatever, like I'm still going to show up. So, you know, we were still able to source a couple things from then. It took a lot more of like communication. Usually we're just able to walk across the aisle and like say, hey, I need this for this week. But it was a lot more like emailing and phone conversations in order to get the product. But yeah, it was completely different. And in the same way, you know, there's just when you're kind of forced to figure it out. I think as chefs, we typically are able to kind of pivot and adapt, just like in any service, you know. I'm sure Sasu knows, like sometimes you just gotta wing it and hope that you can and do it well enough so that nobody really notices. But in this instance, it was a little more difficult to kind of hide that transition. And so everybody's, you know, us, like most people, are just kind of forced to do what we could. But definitely a very fast turnaround to transition. For us specifically, we turned to, we're kind of known for our ramen that we serve on the street at the markets. And then we kind of pivoted it to like a prepackaged stuff. So it was like finding all of the deli containers, you know, and trying to rescale everything and then make instructions. And it was a good start, but then it was just, you know, after that, transitioning to, you know, what other menu items could we do? I mean, also trying to keep pace with people's interests and desires. Now everybody's, you know, viewing things strictly on social media or through, you know, newsletters or websites. Like it was trying to reach customers in a new way, you know, which was really difficult. We had some great support from our regulars right out the gate, which was nice. But then, you know, kind of as other places pivoted to takeout and, you know, maybe people just got bored or kind of agitated by the having to cook everything at home, you know, we started to see interests and sales decline a little bit. So then it's like reinventing ourselves again with like, okay, what other menu items can we come up with to like keep people's attention? And so that too was like not only a struggle, but it's kind of like, and I use this term a lot, but it's like trying to, you know, plan for growth and adaptation whilst also producing simultaneously. So, you know, usually like you, and I think our worlds, we like to plan ahead as much as possible. But when it's, you know, okay, I'm planning for the next like 6 hours, and then I have to plan for the next 6 hours while I'm kind of producing those, you know, it was extremely overwhelming, to say the least.
Yeah. And Jeanette, the junk food project had existed a little bit before the pandemic, but what were you doing in March last year, and how did you first become involved with it?
Rasmus Monk had delivered food out to homeless people a couple of times when he had a Sunday off. He had made some food and distributed it, but had a wish to make a constantly delivery to the people on the street, because they obviously need this food and there isn't that many offers for it. So when the pandemic closed down all the restaurants, and Rasmus Monk was standing with 4 kitchens and some employees that didn't have anything to do, he started this junk food project and produced 500 to 600 meals a day in the whole lockdown. And that was in the first 2 months, and distributed it to shelters who could give it out to homeless people, because they were even more in a trouble because they couldn't come into those places because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So when then the restaurants opened again, then we evaluated that there's a need of this food, even though there's no pandemic, because they don't get the food and it's not available for them. So we moved into another kitchen and had continued the project since mid-June from another kitchen.
Mm-hmm. And now you're still feeding over 300 people a day, is that right?
Yeah, we are producing more than 300 meals, and it's only because that's our capacity in the kitchen we're in. We could easily hand out the double in Copenhagen, mm-hmm. and we would like to expand also to the rest of the Denmark, but the capital could easily take 600 meals, and in wintertime even more.
How has the Danish government supported this project, if at all, over the course of the past year?
When Rasmus Munk started the project, he had correspondence with the mayor of with responsibility of the social affairs, and she found out which shelters would like to have this food and who would need it most. But that is actually the only cooperation we have had with the government so far. We still have a wish that they will contribute in a way, maybe offer a kitchen, a larger kitchen, so we can expand the capacity or the number of meals, or some other contribution. So they give us a little bit of help. We spend really a lot of money to buy raw food articles, and even though we are fighting food waste as well and having a lot of surplus food, we still spend a lot of money. So we definitely need a contribution from the government.
Mm-hmm. And so what was I mean, I know that Finland has had like a relatively small COVID rate, especially compared to the US. What has the government response or communication been like in your country?
I should be honest, right? It hasn't been that amazing, to be really honest. I have to say that people in our line of business have, like, I'm speaking for everybody now, and I don't know, somehow it's almost like we almost kind of feel like we haven't been valued at all as like a part of culture, or a part of like upbringing, or a part of the economy. We're almost like back to the Middle Ages, where, you know, you're just the pirate or thief, more or less. We felt like that. And I have to say, like, I've been the guy who's trying to be as positive as possible within all of this, just to create new things and keep people happy and keep myself happy and all of this. But to be always last to know what the politicians and what the people who have all the power in their hands, what they have decided, and I know last, how can I be, how is it possible to be sort of responsible to the people who work with you, like your staff and your clients? And everybody's asking, like, when can we come in for dinner? And I'm like, well, do you know what? I have no idea. Like, we don't know. So I think this is just my personal opinion, but because our government they've been very sort of keen on having certain sort of instances, helping them understand what they're doing. And I feel that from our line of business, we just haven't had trustworthy people enough for our government, that someone could go there and say, like, hey, if you're going to do this, this is what's going to happen. Like, we're going to lose our restaurants, or we're going to lose 1/3 of our restaurants if you make this decision now. And so I don't think there's been lots of talk like this. So it's created a cycle where pretty many from our business, I hate to say, but a lot of people have actually changed job. They've just jumped into something else, gone like, I don't want to be in this line of business if we're treated this way, you know, like we're just trash. Like, because we've had our politicians, it's unbearable to some people to understand it. You have a politician right there who you've actually voted into power, so to say, and the person goes like, oh, well, but restaurants come and go, so who cares? And you're like, excuse me, is that the guy who I voted to take care of my stuff? Like, it's been quite hard it's been a struggle for all of us to kind of understand what will be behind all this, what's on the other side. Like, does the city, does the government, do they actually sort of do they value what we do? You know, so
yeah, because I think, are you scheduled to reopen for dine-in? Is it this week?
Yeah, we've gotten like 2 weeks ago, so we had a second lockdown. So for everybody to know, we've had very low, as Jackie said, we've had very low rates of COVID here. So we've been extremely sort of lucky actually throughout. I've been able to work somehow all of this year. So, but mostly doing takeaway dinners for home, or takeaway sushi, or just adapting to making bento boxes for lunch for people, and doing some stuff for hotels and whatever. So we've been adapting as much as possible. We've had like 4 to 5 different business ideas on top of each other that we've been doing. And I think, Zach, you know what it feels like if you can't make your product and you're doing 4 different, it's kind of a struggle within them. It's like juggling. It's like, which one do I do best and all that. But we got 2-3 weeks ago, we got this sort of call from the government, like, hey, you guys can open now. But they gave us the chance to open at 9 a.m. and close 5 p.m.
Okay.
So for any of the dinner restaurants, 5 p.m. is just no option at all.
Mhm.
And the thing is, because we still have the high recommendation for everybody to work from home. So none of the lunch places wanted to open because there's nobody at the sites. There's nobody at the offices, you know, really. And they gave us 2 hours more a week ago. So this means I had the chance to actually open Aura for like a half dinner. So we're now doing service from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And 7 p.m. the guests have to choose whatever alcohol they want to drink. And then there's no alcohol serving anymore after that. So it's almost like, you know, back to the Middle Ages. So that, you know, you come in at 6, but by 7 o'clock, you have to decide what alcohol you want to drink tonight. And then you have time until 8, and we need to kick them out at 8 o'clock. So, but at least we got to open. So I'm kind of happy about that. So we can do dinner for home, which is a pickup or delivery for home, a 5-course. And then, because we usually do a 10-course, so it's like a 3.5-hour extravaganza. And, you know, we give all that we can to the people within those 3.5 hours. And now we're doing like a strict 2-hour sort of boom, boom, boom thing. But yeah, it's been pretty weird to do like a 2-hour service.
Oh, I'm sure it must feel very truncated, as opposed to what it used to be like with your guests.
Yes.
Okay, so Zachary, I mean, how do you feel about how Washington and kind of the US has handled kind of, there's been a bit of back and forth, I feel like, in Seattle with what restaurants can and can't do. It's been tough to watch. I don't know how it has been for you to navigate.
Yeah, you know, I think in same way Sasu was, I'm gonna be blunt. I think there hasn't been, especially in the beginning, last year, we didn't really have a lot of great direction, and I think a lot of great, I want to say, I'm going to use the word compassion for average citizens, and especially the underprivileged, people who don't have the resources to, you know, be able to take care of themselves and take the proper steps to protect themselves and get what they need just to survive. I think state government, you know, depending on the state government, I feel fortunate to be in Washington state in that sense, where, you know, our governor, he did very well, I think, you know, and he was very, he did his best, you know, whereas opposed to some places, they didn't really seem to care. And, you know, there was a considerable amount of rhetoric that would have convinced them, you know, that this wasn't going to be a big deal and that this was going to pass. So, you know, I think there's just been a lot of confusion, multiple realities, if you will, that have been hard for people to really have perspective on and navigate. But from our perspective, you know, there was, again, there's, I think people were a little bit more strict in a sense to protect public health, which I appreciate, and, you know, I'm understanding of, but at least as far as the trying to find the sorry, I'm gonna turn my mic down for a second. Trying to find the revenue for us was complicated, and then now, you know, the staffing issue is also complicated because, like Sasu mentioned, like, people are staying home more, and, you know, we don't want to put anybody in an uncomfortable position where they don't feel safe. That's the last thing we want. Half of our staff decided to stay and work from home. So it was pretty much my brother and I and another one of our coworkers that was cooking the whole time. And like he said too, if somebody is able to collect unemployment and stay home, they're less likely to, and be able to survive, which I think is the most important part. I mean, I think probably like Sasu as well, like, there was a point where it's like, what do I need to keep doing this? If there's nobody to feed, like, do I need to be a business owner anymore? Like, is this the end? Like, what's, it was just so many emotions kind of running constantly. But Washington State, I think, ended up doing pretty well overall. But in the United States, they just, after a year, like, they just released support for restaurants specifically to survive, and it's one of those things. It's like going to a restaurant is a luxury here. And not everybody has that luxury. So, I understand that there are other priorities first, but at the same time, the service industry is a huge sector of our economy here in the United States. It employs a lot of people. And like he said, or like he mentioned as well, it's like a lot of undervalued labor typically. And I completely understand why some people just didn't want to come back. People are making minimum wage here, which is absolutely ludicrous and not a livable wage. When you have massive kind of restaurant corporations and chains and stuff that would much rather maximize profits for a few individuals over the well-being of the staff that actually makes the business, like, move on a daily basis. I mean, it's just kind of it's a very upsetting mindset and an aspect to this industry, which is pretty embarrassing when you're a part of it. But, I think there are also individuals, especially a lot here in Seattle, and I know over the world, that are trying to take this kind of moment in the life of our industry and trying to turn it around, trying to use it for the reasons that we think it should be, which is it's nourishing people, it's feeding people, it's trying to, like, push people or allow people to, like, move through their days with sustenance and vigor. And that almost seems, at least for me personally, I've kind of had this like this sort of like conflicting motivations between whether or not I should be just feeding people in the masses like Jeanette is. We've tried to do a similar program, feeding the underprivileged whenever we were able to, but from being a chef and being kind of classically trained and kind of knowing what the industry was like in the fine dining realms. I mean, there's a certain aspect of creativity that is really, when you're doing it and you see created this beautiful work of art on a plate, it's something that's really, hard to let go of. It is a form of expression, and it makes, I know, a lot of cooks happy, and chefs happy, despite the undeniably, like, difficult amount of work that it takes to get to that very beautiful plate of food. And so I think that's just been like a hard thing for us to navigate, on top of, again, trying to find money to do these things, trying to find the resources to continue to feed people. And I guess circling back around to it, government support and has been present, but the fact that it's only now coming out, as far as like a stimulus for restaurants, it seems a little absurd. But I voted for a guy because I had to, because it was better than the other choice. But it's still, there's still other interests that are above them, that are also kind of causing people to act in a certain way. And that's, it's never going to be in the favor of the it's never going to be with the sort of lower tiers in mind, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Could I just comment? Could I just
sorry.
comment?
Yeah.
I just want to pay justice to our government, because the government actually had supported all restaurants with a package of salary and other cuts that they have in order just to survive through this crisis. So it's another thing that they don't support a non-profit organization. So it's two different things, just to make right that we have been lucky. Actually, most of companies have had support from the government. If you could just show evidence for a turnover.
That's great.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
I mean, with it being so hard and all the pivoting, I mean, did any of you did closing ever cross your mind and just not doing anything for a year or for however long it was going to take? No,
Oh.
so it's like, no.
I'm like, how could I? Like, who's
Yeah.
gonna pay? There's nobody to pay the rent, right? And then I'm always responsible to my team.
Yeah.
I'm like the front man. And
Yeah.
if I give up, what signal am I sort of giving out to everybody else? Because we're all, whether you guys like it or not, but we're all role models for, the next generation and even this generation of chefs and people within the hospitality business. So we always need these front men and front women who just whoosh into something and create something beautiful out of nothing, right?
Yeah.
So no, it never crossed my mind. It's like, how could I? Like, it's just impossible as a thought.
Yeah. Zachary, what about you?
Yes, many times. to be honest, whether or not we could do that is a different story. I think, again, and I mentioned this yesterday, like I started off the pandemic recovering from an elective surgery, and so I had enough on my mind trying to get better, let alone like turn my business around. We were just kind of at that point where I feel like we were actually ready to like even take the next step, and then of course this comes around, and so it's like, okay, now we're starting from square one. There are plenty of moments where it really, like, we called it into question, for sure, but I think ultimately, like Sasu, like there's just something there that would just keep us going, and part of that is the desire to feed people and continue to take care of people to the best of our ability. I mean, as a chef, if you're not cooking for people, like what are you doing? What's the point? And I think it definitely, it definitely calls the career path into question, but I think this year has definitely had a lot of put us all through a lot of self-reflection as to, if I am a chef, well, what does that mean? Again, is my role just a sort of cog in the machine of this local food system and a local kind of agricultural system and a food economy? Am I a processor of foods grown by the farmers distributed to the people? Is that my role? And how could I best do that efficiently and effectively? And more often than not, that would come in the form of just larger bulk processes, braises, kanjis, things like that. Or am I striving to put this this very personal and sort of ephemeral expression on a plate? Is that most important, as my role in society? So I think, taking those two sort of very drastically different roles and responsibilities in our industry into consideration, I mean, there was definitely aspects that there was definitely times that allowed us to want to continue to do what we do and have a personal expression, and mainly in a sense to like try and keep people to fed, but also as a business, I need to find revenue. Like we have our overheads, those aren't going away. We, like, our landlord didn't give us a break. They shared resources, but they have their own landlords that they have to pay, and I think that ultimately kept us going in the end. Is like, we could go even farther into debt, or we can just try and do what we can to stay alive. But it definitely was, you know, there were moments for sure that seemed pretty pretty dire, but we did it somehow, sort of. I don't know.
Yeah.
We made it work.
Yeah. I would say,
You know, I have to say that chefs are sort of the ones who are actually chefing, you know, chefs. They have that I won't give up kind of attitude anyway. They're going to push it like no matter what, right? So we have this saying in my language that you're going to separate them from these. And I think if there's something that the pandemic has done is that you've actually shaken, it's almost like wishing for gold, you know, like you find the good nuggets there now after the last year. You know which one of the chefs has the most of the drive to cater for people and to just stay doing, even though it would like be the last thing you do, you know, like you're going to still be pushing that food out for people because that's your calling. I think that's part of what Zach was just saying, like, you know, we're born with that calling, and, you know, if you aren't, then you're probably the guy who, or the girl who wants to, you know, take some other job next so that you wouldn't be in this situation if the pandemic goes on and all that. But yeah, we've chosen our path. So
yeah. Okay. Well, and then thinking about coming out of this and the future, I mean, Jeanette, it sounds like junk food is here to stay, and you are all excited about what's coming next. What is coming next for you?
Junk food is definitely going to keep on fighting for this purpose, and I think that's really a good thing that such a crisis can turn out to a new product that just are functioning and working on the side of this fine dining alchemist restaurant. That's a good story, because as Rasmus Monk had said the whole time, that I cannot go to the hospital and I cannot get water in Africa, but I can do food. And people are in need of food, so that's what I can do, and that's what I want to do. And now we have taken over. Rasmus Monk is still participating in many decisions and on the side the whole time, but we are an independent company, really fighting for getting the funding so we can exist on the long term, and trying to develop the non-profit organization as a business that can be earning money as well, by having young people who are on the age in the kitchen, try to develop them, finding their potential and getting to know that they are something worth, and we can help them to get on with a job or an education, because it's a meaningful project we are doing. Maybe they're not going to be a cook or being in the restaurant world, but they will just learn to have different skills that are getting them possible to get a real job or getting an education. And then we develop products as well, so we can sell. We have collaborators with some of the supermarkets in Denmark, and we develop products, junk food product. If you make a burger at home, then you can buy ketchup and mustard and things like that, so we can owe money that way, and they can finance the meals that we are creating. So we believe that it's a good way to go.
Yeah, sounds like it. Sasu, what about you? No more sushi ever after this?
I'm not saying never. I'm not saying never.
Maybe there'll be a new lockdown.
Yeah.
I have to let you guys into a couple of secrets. First of all, we made this the last sort of package of sushi that we sold from the restaurant as takeaway last year, just before midsummer, so like June 20th or something, and we sold the last ones. Okay, hallelujah, we're done. And if there is a new lockdown, we're going to have a new product. So no more sushi ever again, right? And after February this year, with the amount of people who walked by the restaurant, put the head inside from the window and said, are you guys still making sushi? Are you still making sushi? Will you ever make sushi again? Because it was so good. And these like vegetarians from the region from where we are, because we're in a rural area, just, you know, on the south side of the city center. So people came by and said, you made the best veggie sushis ever. Like, you have to keep doing them. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I've kind of made a promise that next time I'm going to make sushi, it's something that's going to stay. It's not going to be a pop-up for like a certain amount of time for lockdown. It should be something that's open and stays there and lives its own life on the side of what I do at Aura. So it could be like a different kind of a set on sushi. Like right now with the spring going, we have so many wild herbs that we could incorporate in there, use only local fish, keep ongoing, you know, like that sort of sushi inspiration from that. Having that said, I think there's another inspiration for Sasu Sushi, because I had no idea, but I just got a message last week from a journalist who had been reading Donald Duck, the local Donald Duck here, the Donald Duck Jr.
Okay.
And she took a picture for me and she said, have you realized that it says Sasu Sushi in that one place on Donald Duck, that you've made it to Donald Duck? So
That's great.
I think there's a sign
It's a
as well
sign.
for like this not to just
Yeah.
go to waste in the future. So yeah, I'm not saying never. So so we just need to find like everything, like the perfect spot and the perfect team and the perfect moment and all of that. Of course, it would be amazing to keep on doing something like that people fell in love so sort of happily with.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, and Zachary, you guys added so many different things to what you were initially offering. Yesterday you mentioned that like randomly garlic aioli became like a hot seller for you guys for Pantry Items. How much
Yeah.
of what you changed over the last year do you think is going to stick moving forward?
Well, definitely we've settled into the sort of items, I guess the at home or the sort of takeaway items, separate from the hot food that we've been serving. And there will be variation for sure, I think, as we move forward. But more or less what we decided to do from the beginning was to start selling sort of the individual components of the dishes that we make, as you know, for people to enjoy at home and kind of in their own way. You know, we make everything from scratch from our noodles and the tortillas that we use. So we're almost not regretting starting to sell our tortillas retail, because now it's hard to keep up with production of them. But the same with our noodles too, you know. We've just started kind of pre-packaging them for people to be able to take home. And, you know, realistically, I think I mentioned this yesterday, that, you know, we were kind of working towards our own brick and mortar concept. Currently, we operate out of a commissary kitchen. And, you know, it when we weren't allowed to sell hot food, well, once we had actually gotten back into the farmers market and able to sell again, once sort of some of the limitations of space and capacity have been increased, you know, we started more or less testing the other half of this business model that we wanted to sort of explore as a brick and mortar concept. So it would be sort of these two things kind of working, these two programs working side by side, one being sort of retail takeaway, and then the other being sort of a hot food option as well. And so, you know, a lot of the stuff that we developed in the beginning was more or less like it'd be on the menu for a couple of weeks or whatever, and they would rotate to something different, whether it wasn't like performing well enough or we just got, you know, kind of bored of it. But, you know, now that we've sort of had that retail packaging, retail option. And now that we're doing hot food again, it is more or less like a full testing, or like I guess a beta of the concept that we want to have in the future. So it allowed us to learn a lot as far as, the different types of business models within the food industry, and kind of refine our vision of what we want that to be in the future. But there is definitely a lot of our spicy, like the spicy chili oil that we put on top of our ramen at the farmer's market. I mean, it's great on so many different things. And so we've started jarring that up. And there was like another like kind of black and garlic oil that we also used to put on our ramen, and have been able to jar that as well. And people, it's great just allowing people to do what they want with it. And, we've got people coming back for it every other week. It's definitely hot and they last a long time. And to see the rate at which people go through them is pretty encouraging. And so, I think as we go along, there are definitely things that will stay, and there are definitely things that will change. But I think it's definitely put us onto a path and kind of forced us into testing something that we were already working on. So in that way, it was, I don't want to say advantageous, but it was definitely just, what we had to do, and it's been working so far, to a degree,
Yeah, no, it sounds like all of you in different ways found a way to bring joy to people during a year that was really hard sometimes, I think, to find joy. And it's weird to like distill it down into a lesson learned, but what what lessons have you learned, like a big takeaway that might change how you do things moving forward? Jeanette, I want to start with you.
What lessons we have learned?
Mm-hmm.
That when you have a skill, you also are obliged to use it for many purposes. So, and when you have energy and you have a surplus of energy, then you are also obliged to use it for those who are more weak. That's a lesson that we have learned, that could be transferred to a really good purpose. And also that even though we spend a hell of a lot of money every day buying a lot of food, then we can get the money so far because people want to help us. So there are many out there who want to support a good project, even though it ought to be the government who did it. But they do a lot of other good things, and then it's nice to learn that people are participating and want to contribute to this good purpose. So reach out and use the skills that you have. That's a lesson.
Yeah, that's great. Sasu, what about you?
Well, I think if I would have to choose one, as in like one thing out of all of this, it's like you said, Jackie, you said that we would bring happiness to people, and we have been bringing happiness to people who haven't had happiness in their lives. They've been contained at their house, and they've had to work from home, and the kids have their gym at home, and everything happens at home, and they want to get out and they can't, and all of that pressure. I used to say that with the sushi that we did and the home dinners that we've learned how to make, we still do, we still make dinners for home as we are open for service. So we still do two products, although they're from the same menu, but we package food for home because we realize that not everyone wants to go to a restaurant right now.
Yeah.
If I would have to choose only one thing in all this, it's kind of the trust yourself and your vision kind of thing. Because as I said earlier, whether we like it or not, we are role models. So to go into a hell like this, if you think of our business in general around the world, everything just cut to scratch in like a moment, and all of us are kind of going like, what next? You have to have the forefront. So someone calls them superheroes, and someone says role model, and someone says the guy who just decided to manage, is to kind of just go out there and do something completely crazy and just believe in it. It's going to be enough, because you already have followers, So like, if you think, if my job really initially and really is to work with local produce only, and then I jump into making sushi and everybody follows, like, I think that should act as an example. No matter what happens, just trust your vision on, like, go for it. Just, like, as in, no fear, just jump in, like, or otherwise you would be the person, as we were speaking earlier, that not everybody has the courage to do. But I really comp Jeanette on what she just said about, if you have a skill, use it, because I'm kind of speaking about the same thing. Like, and then Zach, we were talking about the calling, like, oh my goodness, like, if you are a chef and you know how to, like Jackie said, make people happy, or bring a little bit of sunshine into their lives in a moment of despair, like, just provoke that feeling inside of you and just go for it. It's gonna be good, So I don't know, it's just, it sounds like an all-rounder instead of like one point that I learned and whatever, but for me, there's no such thing as overly confident moments in my life. I'm constantly kind of, I make a decision and then I go, was that a good one? I'm just wondering. And then I'm like, whatever, let's go for it, So is to just be confident now and say, like, no matter what pandemic hits you, if you know how to cook and you have a vision on, let's bring this to people's lives, let's make a little bit of sunshine, just go and do it.
Well, yeah. And then the response that not only you got with what you were doing with the restaurant, but Jeanette, the response that you got from the community saying, like, this is an amazing idea and this is what we needed. Thank you. Zachary, what about for you? Lessons, big takeaways.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that we observed, I guess at least personally, is understanding how we operate, and like kind of our responsibilities within the community. There have been a number of chefs in our community that have long-standing programs that have like kind of pivoted to feed the community for free, and those are extremely admirable. Our team is so small that, like, we've done the best that we could, and we were still able to serve over 1,000 pounds of food to the local food banks to be distributed to the public. And kind of like I had mentioned, yesterday, Jackie, that like that program is something that I after having gone through all of this, it definitely seems like it is a very crucial part to what it is that I have the calling for. And being in a particular place at the farmers markets and having direct access to the growers that produce the food here in the region, we are at a very interesting point to not only be able to utilize their excess products, but also in a place within the community that we're all sort of now relying on each other even more to really to just survive. I mean, there's an aspect to it which is so much more wholesome than it ever was before. And I think our ability to work together and to just find ways, despite any sort of other existing social constructs or philosophies, like, we have really shown ourselves and each other that, like, we need each other. And I think in this country, unfortunately, there's been a lot of talk to try and divide us and single certain factors out and pit people against each other, when all that does is just isolate people from other people. And I think just as a species, like, that only really leads to one result. You have just people fighting to survive, and kind of pit against each other, as opposed to truly, again, dropping the existing social constructs that we have and economic constructs that we have. And like, if we do want to survive, all we have to do is actually just work together and think about it a little bit differently, and I think, more than anything else in the realms of food, we, as chefs, we nourish people. Like, it is our job to not only prepare food for other people, but also like teach people how to prepare food for themselves. I think that the whole sort of at home, concept that a lot of restaurants had to pivot to, ultimately, whether or not they continue those programs, is beneficial to the consumer, because they might have been tested to, baste a duck breast or a piece of fish, and they never would have been able to do that before, maybe. But that sort of confidence and that intuition that an individual can gain from being able to prepare their own food is something that, I feel like is very important to, the sort of our self-reliance. And that's not something that, if they were ordering takeout all the time, and just got food in a box and they ate it, it's not something that they maybe would have been tested with before. But again, coming back to sort of that, I hate to use the term self-sufficiency, because that also kind of seems like that sort of like the isolationist perspective. But realistically, if we are all better at taking care of ourselves, but still simultaneously working together so that we are able to take care of ourselves in the way that we need to, and that we can kind of all just work for each other while simultaneously working for ourselves. Like, society seems like it would be better for it. We would be able to thrive more, as opposed to kind of fighting over resources, which I think everybody would agree with is abundant. Like, resources still, to a certain degree, are abundant in our, on this planet. But there is a certain group of individuals that are choosing to waste it for very particular reasons, i.e. profits, over, the actual like good of people and communities. The fact that, massive kind of food corporations and industrial agriculture will throw away tons and tons of food because it doesn't have the right price today. They can't make a profit on it. And yet, so they wasted all of this, this food that could be consumed by people. And maybe it didn't, it wasn't good for business, but was it good for them, I guess, overall, to throw away all of that food? Absolutely not. Is it good to throw away, copious amounts of expired goods from a grocery store? No, it's not. Though that food can feed people. When people put legalities on it that they want to protect their liability, I suppose. But at the same time, it's like, can you prove that food is bad? You probably could, and you'd probably see that it is still good. That's why people are having to dig it out of dumpsters in order to feed themselves and get by. And I think, kind of looping it back, like, we just need to find a better way to take care of each other, and be responsible for other people, and responsible for ourselves, and be able to take care of ourselves in that way, but ultimately to serve the greater good. Like, we're all going to be more powerful and stronger together if we move forward in that way, with that mindset. And that, we just can't just think for ourselves, but we have to think for others. I was kind of confusing. I was going back and between the two, but it was kind of a hard line to ride, because it's, there, to a degree, it is, we have to be able to take care of ourselves. But I feel like by working with others, we can be, it's kind of like one feeds the other in a cyclical fashion, like, we take care of ourselves, therefore we can take care of others with that, and then through that they will be able to help us take care of ourselves. And it's sort of, understanding it as that, as opposed to like, I'm going to take whatever I can get and you guys can figure out and take whatever you can get, and that's it. Like, you do you and I'll do me, and that's it. Which I think this, being in this particular position where people depend on us for their well-being has definitely shown that sort of symbiosis between us and our consumers and our friends and the community.
Yeah. Well, and I think also some of the things that a lot of restaurateurs did on the surface kind of seemed like it was for survival, but you really were able to foster a different connection with people, I think, when they brought you into their homes. Like coming to Aura for a 10-course meal is an experience in itself, but getting to take home a 5-course meal and seeing the instructions and enjoying it in a different way also creates a different bond with the people who are coming to see you. Just like Zachary, having those instructions, I've had your ramen kit before. The instructions are like amazingly well thought out. It walks you through it, makes you feel like, gives you confidence if you've never created a really great bowl of ramen before, you know? So, and Jeanette, just finding the people who are eating these meals as well, like they're all things that really helped create a sense of community where certain times everyone, I think, felt really alone. And it's just food. Everybody needs it. We all need it. But when you can find more to it and get a sense of community out of it, I think in unexpected ways, that's when it makes it really great and gives, I think, all of us a little bit of hope for how we move forward with our community beyond this that maybe we would have found, but who knows? People are weird. You never know what
Very
they're
true.
looking for.
True. Yeah, I agree.
I think those are all my questions, though, unless anyone else has anything they want to contribute. But this was wonderful. Thank you all so much.
Thanks,
You're
everyone.
welcome. Nice.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie.
Joining you.